everyone, and welcome back to Shalom EduWeb, a junction of knowledge and awareness. Since coronavirus pandemic has hit the world really hard, we are hearing a lot about viruses. And basically these viruses are the simplest and smallest form of life on earth. And not just that, there's a lot more about these viruses. So in line with this, I thought of coming up with a series of lectures covering various basic as well as advanced topics of virology. And with virology, it simply means study of viruses. To begin with, I will make you understand about the basic nature of viruses, that is, the characteristics of a virus. So let's get started. There are majorly four characteristics or nature of viruses. First, that it has nucleic acid genome and a protein code. Secondly, the nucleic acid genome can be of RNA or DNA, but never both. Thirdly, there is a breakdown and release of that particular genome in the living cell which a virus infects. And the fourth is replication of the virus at the expense of infected living cells. So we'll be covering all these four characteristics separately. So now let us look at the first characteristic of a virus or a nature of virus, that is nucleic acid genome and protein code. As you can see in this pictorial presentation, that virus consists of a set of nucleic acid genes that are enclosed within a protein code called capsid. As you can see these green spheres in the left side of the picture as well as on the right side of the picture. So on the left side there is a spherical shell shaped virus, and on the right side is a tubular rod shaped virus, and in both of these nucleic acid genome is present within the protein capsid. However, in some cases capsid is surrounded by a lipid membrane that is called an envelope. As you can see in the pictorial presentation on the left side in this spherical shell shaped virus, but the envelope is absent in the other one. That is why some of the viruses are known as enveloped viruses because they have a lipid envelope. However, some are non-enveloped viruses because the lipid envelope is absent in those viruses. So this complete infectious virus particle is basically known as a virion. Second characteristic of a virus is about its nucleic acid genome. That can be either RNA, that is ribonucleic acid, or DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid. So when we talk about DNA, it basically contains genetic blueprint for building and maintaining all living organisms. And if I talk about RNA, these are molecules that are involved in various biological processes such as coding, expression, regulation of genes. The genome of largest known virus is as large as 1.2 million nucleotides that can code for over 1200 proteins. So viruses are basically either made up of double-stranded DNA or single-stranded RNA, but never both. Some genomes can be in circular while others are linear. There is a peculiar nature of viruses that viruses are the only form of life that can have genomes made up of RNA, because all organisms store the information to grow or reproduce exclusively in DNA molecules. And RNA is basically transcribed from that DNA, but in case of RNA containing viruses, or we simply call them RNA viruses, they are unique in itself and face some problems because of their genome. So it is important that they synthesize the mRNA from RNA itself and must replicate their RNA genome. So if we talk about replication, to replicate means to produce two identical copies. For this they encode for RNA dependent RNA polymerase to perform these two functions. So basically the enzyme RNA dependent RNA polymerases is encoded by the RNA viruses itself to perform these two major functions. That is, one, to synthesize mRNA, that is messenger RNA from RNA, and replication of RNA genome in the RNA viruses. So the third characteristic of viruses is about breakdown and release of its genome. So basically they break down and release genome inside the living cells. So replication of viruses is different from other pathogens that can multiply inside other host cells only, in such a way that virus replication begins with partial disintegration of the virus particle. So uncoating occurs and thereafter there is a release of the viral genome within the cell. So once uncoated, viral genome basically acts as a template for the synthesis of messenger RNA, which in turn synthesizes viral proteins using enzyme systems, ribosomes, energy and molecular building blocks that are present in the cell. Later, these viral proteins direct the replication of viral genome. And viral structural proteins encapsulate the newly replicated genome to form a progeny virus particle. So these progeny virus particles then can infect the adjacent living cells. Fourth characteristic of a virus or a nature of virus is replication at the expense of living cells. This simply means that viruses can replicate only within a living cell. That's why they are called obligatory intracellular parasites. And obligatory means compulsory. So they are intracellular parasites and they definitely need living cells to replicate. But why? What is the reason behind this concept about viruses? Because primemost reason is that they lack basic elements required for growth and replication. These basic elements broadly includes the enzyme system. First and foremost, enzyme system. Why? So viruses basically lack the enzyme systems that produce the basic chemical building blocks like nucleotides, amino acids, carbohydrates and lipids. And also enzyme systems generate usable chemical energy in the form of adenosine triphosphate, that is ATP, or by photosynthesis or by metabolism of sugars and other small molecules. Apart from enzyme systems, viruses also lack ribosomes, transfer RNAs and associated enzymatic machinery that directs protein synthesis. So it also lacks the membranes that localize and concentrate in a defined space the cellular macromolecules, organic and inorganic molecules and ions required in growth and metabolism. So to summarize, there are some key points about viruses. That virus contains nucleic acid genome packaged in a protein coat. Envelope may or may not be present. Second, virus transports its genome into a host cell where the genome directs synthesis of viral proteins, that is transcription and translation occurs, and is also replicated and packaged at the expense of host cell. Apart from this, virus genomes are either RNA or DNA, but never both. And most importantly, RNA viruses encode their own RNA-dependent RNA polymerases to carry out both of these functions. So I hope this lecture has made you understand the basic characteristics of a virus, the basic nature that virus holds based on these 4 points which we have just understood. And just stay tuned for a series of lectures on virus. Thank you.